was born with rough hands, hands that never held gold, never wore rings, never touched silk. But those same hands created gods. Every morning before sunrise, while the village still slept peacefully, he walked barefoot through dusty streets, carrying stones on his shoulders. Huge stones, heavy enough to break a man's back. But he carried them with devotion. People called him a laborer. But he was more than that. He was the sculptor who carved the idol, the mason who built the temple walls, the worker who cleaned every corner before the first prayer, the man who made the lamps glow, the cobbler who stitched sandals for others, the craftsman who created drums, bells, decorations, and clothes for festivals. His sweat lived in every inch of that temple. Every sound of prayer echoed because of his hard work. Yet nobody knew his name. Years passed, stone by stone, pillar by pillar. The temple slowly rose toward the sky. The villagers celebrated proudly. Look how beautiful our temple is. Our God is finally here. Priests arrived. Rich people donated money. Garlands covered the entrance. Music filled the streets. And there he stood, quietly watching from a distance. His eyes were filled with happiness. Because after years of labor, the temple was complete. The idol he carved, with bleeding fingers, now stood shining inside the sanctum. People folded their hands before it. They cried, they prayed, they called it divine. But nobody looked at the man who gave it shape. That evening, for the first time, he gathered courage. He washed himself carefully, wore his cleanest clothes, folded his hands with respect, and slowly, he climbed the temple steps, not as a worker, not as a servant, but as a human being wanting to see the God he created. Before he could enter, a loud voice stopped him. "Hey, stay outside!" The crowd turned toward him. One man stepped forward angrily. "You cannot enter this temple." The worker stood frozen. His lips trembled. "But I built this temple." Another man replied coldly, "You may have built it, but people like you are impure." Impure. That one word shattered something inside him. The same hands that carved the idol were suddenly untouchable. The same man who cleaned the temple every day was considered too dirty to pray inside it. The same worker who made lamps for God was denied the light of dignity. He looked around silently. The walls he built stood proudly before him. The floors he polished reflected golden lamps. The bells he hung echoed through the air. Everything inside belonged to his labor, except the right to enter. His eyes slowly filled with tears, not because he was poor, not because he worked hard, but because society had taught him one cruel lesson. You can serve us, but you can never stand equal to us. And that night, while people prayed inside the temple, the man who built it sat alone outside under the cold sky. The God he carved received flowers, but the sculptor received humiliation. And somewhere in the silence of that night, a painful question echoed louder than the temple bells. How can a human become impure for touching the same God he created? Caste made society blind enough to worship stone idols, but insult living humans, blind enough to respect temples, but disrespect the workers who built them, blind enough to seek blessings from God, while denying humanity to people. But the truth is simple. No religion teaches hatred. No God asks for discrimination. No temple becomes pure by keeping humans outside. A society that treats workers as untouchable can never truly call itself civilized. Because real worship is not in rituals. Real worship is in humanity. Real purity is not in caste. Real purity is in compassion. And the day we learn to respect every human equally, that day for the first time, our prayers will truly reach God, because equality is the only true worship.